Well, I'm delighted to have a very special guest here. This is Tim Dedopulos. Hello there, Tim. How are you?
Hi, Ollie. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you very much. First, we've met, so very nice for you to come along for International Game Book Day. And for those who don't know Tim's work, you've done a lot of different things. Do you want to have a quick rundown on your resume, and then we'll go back and forth and
Well,
pore over it.
if it's possible to get paid to write it at some time or another, I've probably written it, except for plays. I haven't written any plays um,
Yet,
yet, yet.
never seen it.
But you know, everything from instruction manuals and contracts and advertising campaigns through to novels, short stories, puzzle books, role-playing games, in-game dialogue, short bits of movie, and now game books.
Wow. So are game books sort of new to you, or have you known them for years and dabbled or had an interest in them?
Oh, I leapt on Warlock of Firedark Mountain almost as soon as it was released, and I had at least 20 of the old fighting fantasy books and Steve Jackson's Sorcery and Joe Diva's stuff, and just a whole bunch of things. Um, I've been doing role playing games since I think AD&D first edition, and game books and role playing games share quite a lot of the same DNA. So, I was always going to be, square in the sights, very much target market.
So when you went to university, what did you study there? Was it
I
connected
did
with what you do now?
not really. I did anthropology. I
Ah,
started off studying computer science, but it wasn't the right course for me, and I got very bored and fed up with it and left and took a year out and then went to do anthropology instead, mainly because a lot of H.P. Lovecraft's protagonists were anthropologists, and it sounded interesting. And it turned out it was fascinating. And
do you use any of that in your puzzle books by any
well,
chance? Or...
the one thing that anthropology teaches you, I think, as a scientific discipline, is how to step outside of a situation and look at things with an alien eye. So try to look at the things which make sense when you don't think about them, but don't really make so much sense when you do think about them. So that certainly informed, a lot of my work and the way I approach the world. And also, you start to get a feel for how cultures hang together and what society is like and what they mean and why people do some of the things they do. And that always
Yes.
helps with fiction. Plus, you write a lot of essays, a
So
lot of
going
essays.
from finishing your course, what did you sort of fall into? What kind of work which connects you to what you do now? What was the first thing that really?
Well, when I left university, I ended up getting a job writing, doing the English translations of manuals for a train company. So translators would sort of have these month-long meetings with Belgian and French people to help nail down an English language version of the train rule book. And then they'd give me this gibberish and say, turn this into real English rather than committee translation. Um, so, absolutely nothing to do with any of it at all. Um, and then I was on holiday in the States, and a friend showed me a deck of Magic Gathering, which I'd never heard of. And I was completely blown away by the idea. I thought it was, just this fascinating, clever concept. And I dug around a little bit, and at the time they were hiring uh, people for the UK office. So I sent them an email saying, "Do you need an editor?" And I ended up getting that job and working on the Slay Industries role-playing game for probably a year up in Glasgow. And then that whole team and all the other role-playing stuff got shut down. And I approached the people who were publishing Magic the Gathering books, offered them a deck builder's guide on the basis that I was former WotC staff. I didn't really mention that the nearest I'd been to Magic was getting handouts of free legend packs. And they took me up on it, and then discovered that for a while when I was a kid, I was in Mensa, and they had some Mensa puzzle books. And would I like to puzzle check them? And that turned into a full-time job. And that in turn, I ended up leaving that and going freelance and writing puzzle books and, anything else anyone would give me to write, and, rambling all over the world, because one of the great things about writing is it doesn't matter where you are. And
yeah.
And that's
and I saw some of the puzzle books. They're available on Amazon, I believe, and they're quite thematic. You've got a sort of Leonardo da Vinci one. What other ones do you have? Is it Sherlock Holmes one you have as well? Or?
Yes. Some of the puzzles. Puzzles are a broad church. So I have some puzzle books that are what we think of as brain teasers. Like the Sherlock Holmes stuff, the Leonardo da Vinci stuff, or like Einstein, Spock. Again, these are things that get handed down to me. My publishers call me up and say, "Will you write a book of Mr. Spock puzzles? We have the license for Mr. Spock. Will you write a book of Spock puzzles?" Yeah. And I'm like, "Yes." And then they say, "There's almost no money and there's almost no time." And I'm like, "Yes." And, there we go. I try to wrap them in a bit of narrative flavor so that it's not just, there are two trains approaching each other at 50 miles an hour and one of them's traveling at 20 miles an hour, and which one gets to Berkhamsted first, that sort of thing. So it makes it a bit more creative for me when I'm doing it, and hopefully a bit more fun to read.
Yeah.
Other stuff, which is moving more towards gamebook territory, is entirely narrative puzzles. So like what used to be called 5-minute mysteries. You put up a short story, basically, with some internal inconsistencies, and then challenge the reader to have spotted the inconsistency that identifies who the villain is from a selection of possibilities, or why this situation is clearly wrong.
They sound very fun, and I can see your slow crawl to the gamebook system. So it's very interesting to see how you ended up here. And now
at the same time, I've been doing quite a lot of freelance role playing work over the years.
Okay. Well, so tell us a little bit about that.
I did quite a lot of stuff for White Wolf at the end of the 90s. I ended up working on all the core World of Darkness game lines except Mage, I think. Did some novels for Vampire, which was great fun. Did a novella for Werewolf. Did a lot of source books for Hunter, stuff like that. And I've done a bunch of things with Greg Stolze as well. So Unknown Armies I've done quite a bit with. Did some stuff on Feng Shui with Atlas. Again, bits and pieces come in and you just sort of do them. So there's always been this strand of both puzzle design and game design in the work I've been doing. And
which now leads us on to
which is
the game books. And indeed, and I can get you to announce them because they're quite exciting, aren't they? Which
fantastic licenses to actually get hold of. Deadpool and She-Hulk, a pair of my favorite Marvel heroes, easily.
So
Deadpool in particular.
how did you get that? How do they approach you, and did you conceal a squeal when you got the job?
I'm not sure I actually concealed my squeals of excitement. Um, but the guy who runs Aconite Books, Mark Gascoigne, is an old pal. We came close to working together with Game Workshop stuff. Some internal politics got in the way there in the end. And he was deeply involved in fighting fantasy back in the day. And Marvel have been on to him for a while to get some game books written, because Aconite does time fiction for Marvel. And they know Mark's history with game books. So they've been talking to him about game books for a while. And when he was thinking through his list of people who were both logical enough to do the structural side and unhinged enough to do Marvel fiction stuff, my name came to the top of the pile. And of course, I leapt on
and those are two characters which are very, well, I suppose they're similar. They both break the fourth wall, and they're both quite sassy and
exactly. They both have what Marvel calls comic awareness, which is they know that they're comic characters and they're aware of the media that they're in. So that gives them a huge leg up in terms of being a character for a game book, because they're able to work with the medium and help the reader subvert it, all while the reader's own avatar in the world is really quite lost. So you have like Deadpool making a size to the reader, which his assistant, the character that you're actually taking the position of, has no idea what's going on. And yeah, very much the same with She-Hulk as well.
So how does that work? You're not playing those characters. You're kind of a tag on, are you? You're observer.
Yeah, you're adventuring with them. You're adventuring with them. Let's put it that way.
As a human or as a superhero?
Well, I've tried to leave the reader stand-in avatar as undefined as possible, because I don't know who's reading.
Yes.
And particularly with game books, which are traditionally second person, you don't want to impose a lot of details about the you that's on the page. But these are normal people. Ostensibly normal people. So when the fists start flying, they tend to stand back and let the heroes do the hard work.
Fantastic. And the actual sort of game mechanics themselves, are they something you've had to come up with, or is something you've been working alongside with someone else?
I mean, everything I've done has been in conjunction with Mark Gascoigne. Obviously, I don't want to come up with some crazed idea which he knew full well wouldn't work for historical reasons, or which was just going to totally destroy things. But yes, I came up with a set of mechanics. There's a combat aspect, obviously, and also we wanted to work in some stuff that was a bit more fresh. So there's achievements, and there are secrets and cheat entries as well, and there are qualities and skills that you have which change in the course of play, which affect the roles you make and the options you have that are open to you. Plus, there's a few mini games, but at the same time, we didn't want to just get bogged down in mechanics. It's all fairly, accessible. That was very important. But there are puzzles as well, obviously. But again, the puzzles that are load-bearing in terms of the plot are circumventable if you're prepared to take a little bit of hit to a stat or something. There are some puzzles which, you might not even notice they exist. But if you do notice them, you're going to get a really nice power boost or a really interesting side entry, maybe a quality that will open up some option you wouldn't otherwise have, stuff like that. Things that aren't going to stop you progressing, but
Mm.
which will just add some texture to what's going on around you.
That's fantastic. And are you allowed to tell us a non-spoilery sort of plot synopsis for these?
Yeah, sure. So for Deadpool, um, Deadpool gets hired by Matt Murdock to investigate some gun running that he's worried about. He's too busy trying to deal with other stuff. He doesn't have the time, so he reluctantly puts Deadpool on it instead. And as Deadpool and the player investigate this matter, they uncover, a truly horrible plot to unify the country's criminal underworld in a day of absolute slaughter and mayhem, and and stop it, hopefully, or maybe join in, because hey.
Yeah. Fantastic. And She-Hulk?
With She-Hulk, She-Hulk gets called by an old enemy, Ruby Tuesday,
Ooh.
being framed for murder. And obviously she's very suspicious because Ruby is a dyed-in-the-wool villain turned tech entrepreneur, and She-Hulk has no reason to trust her. But looking into the matter, there's this whole wave of deaths across Silicon Valley, and someone is bringing together a number of disparate companies in a way that could have really horrifying implications for everything.
Yeah.
So those are the spoiler-free synopses, I guess.
Fantastic. And the artwork, do you have the Marvel artists doing inserts?
We have some really lovely covers done by a Marvel artist. And then we have a bunch of sort of silhouette pieces, like action poses, and as with the old fighting fantasy stuff, we have sort of like little Deadpool lying around the place, or throwing a grenade, or whatever, or She-Hulk going in, fist flying.
Fantastic. That's great. And how do people? They're not out yet, are they? They're out pretty soon, or maybe they are.
They're out in different times in different territories. They're not out in the UK yet, as far as I know. They might be out in the US by now, physically. The ebooks are probably out in the US and UK, as far as I know. They've been tweaked so that you can use them on an e-reader of some sort.
Yeah, fab. That's really cool. Oh, Tim's disappeared again. He is there, but his camera tends to can't tell. There we go. He's back in. That's all right.
Camera.
We almost made it through. I was doing so well. It's I think it's because you got that UFO on your T-shirt, and someone's trying to hack in and just make sure it's not seen too much. I would believe
the X-Files poster.
Is that something you've written as well? Have you had any?
I haven't had a chance to do anything for the X-Files.
Again, yet.
Again,
yet's the word.
You never know.
So that brings me on to your future projects. I'm sure you've got a few irons in the fire. Anything you can tell us?
I've been doing a few puzzle books this year based on Wordle. Again, something that someone came to me with and said, we need these. Can you do something with them? That's been quite fun. That's been primarily programming for a large chunk of it, just to get word flow generation going. And then you take that up and then you shape that and hammer that into puzzles. But I'm thinking I'd like to turn my hand to some fiction again. So I am slowly brewing a kind of sort of Lovecraftian mythos, Call of Cthulhu-ish, chapter by chapter thing, which I'll probably put out on Royal Road as it starts coming together. I'm looking forward to that.
Is there a Lovecraft?
Try and capture the lunacy of particularly how the mythos is played in role-playing games.
Yeah, yeah, they are fun to write. You got to be in the right kind of mood though to write a kind of mind-bendingly depressing, weird stuff.
Oh,
So
I don't think it wouldn't be super depressing. This would be more kind of action in the nihilistic setting rather than, full-on horror stories.
yeah.
The
And do you
world
think
is
that could be a
grim at the
puzzle
moment.
book and game book as well, or are you just going to go for novelization?
No, I think I'm just going to go for a novel on this one.
Cool, that'd be fun with some puzzles in
Yeah,
it.
maybe a
Some
few
mind
hidden here
bending bits.
and there.
Yeah. I did see someone wrote a novel and it did have all these kind of key elements in it. So it was a novel puzzle. The whole thing was
Yeah,
a puzzle. That was very interesting.
I have
Well, I suppose
thought about that.
lot of books are.
Yeah,
Reading Sherlock Holmes is like that, isn't it? You kind of
yes,
trying to
yeah.
unravel things as you go along.
I
But
have
that's
thought about
fantastic.
a sort of a mystery novel, probably a detective mystery novel of some sort, where there is stuff for the reader to solve as well. I have considered that.
Yeah,
And who knows? Maybe nothing's ever
fantastic.
off the cards.
No, absolutely. That's the exciting thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
The world is unlimited out there, especially in your brain. There's so little time to do it all. So,
Yes.
Tim, if people want to follow you, if they want, not in person, but if they want to follow you on social media or on websites, or what's the best way they can
The
connect
best
and
place to find me is on Twitter, where my username is Ghostwards. I do my best to tweet absolute nonsense, um, particularly if it is slightly, dark tinged or a little weird or spooky or thought provoking. I try not to talk about current affairs and politics
yeah.
because my wells of bitterness and loathing are very deep. And if I start ranting, who knows when I'll stop.
It's a dangerous area, isn't it?
It
I
is.
try and leave all politics out of everything I do on social media. I think it's just the
Yeah.
safest
Yeah.
option, really. Um,
Yeah.
but thank you,
So
Tim.
I
Thank you
like to
so
think of
much for
my
joining
Twitter
us at
feed as a
International
little
Game Book Day.
strange space.
That's people. You're preaching to lots of strange people who love that kind of stuff. So I'm sure you get a few more followers
Yeah.
there. But Tim, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you
Yeah.
very much for your time.
Have a
And
wonderful
we'll look
convention.
at. Thank you very much. Thank you. Take care. Bye for now.
Thanks.